rifle fell down, smashed the scope, and, well, okay, I just pulled the scope off. I left it in camp, and I hunted with the peep sight. And so we went out it was a day or two after that. So I had been over there. I had been hunting with the peep sight. And that morning, Charlie and I crossed the Ampersand River, and he went one way and I went the other. And it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, I heard him shooting, and he had shot a buck. And because I heard him fire the signal. And the plan was, if you hear the signal, just mark down what time it is, and if you're anywhere near, come. But if not, we'll go back tomorrow and get it. So I heard him shooting, and I said, you know what? I said, the day is still pretty young. I'm going to keep hunting.
Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails podcast. I'm your host, Joey Davis. Today I'm joined by Brent Dragon, and our special guest is Harold Torre. Harold, how you doing?
I've never been better. Enjoy having you fellows here tonight.
Yes, thank you. This is round 2 of this.
Round 2. You got me winded there 2 weeks ago. We had to, I had to throw in the towel for a little while. Yeah. But it's given me a chance to think about some other hunts and some other things. And so we'll see if we can't have fun here for the next hour or so.
Yeah, you got a pile of photos here.
I come up this afternoon and I went through some of my things and trying to pull out pictures and jog my memory so I could, you'd think you'd remember every one, but I need aids to jog my memory. So I went through kind of a trip down memory lane, looked at a bunch of pictures. My son told me to look into a couple of particular ones, and so, yeah, I've got a few things. I think I can keep you occupied for a little bit of time. Anyways.
Oh, I would say so.
Yeah.
You'll keep us busy.
Yeah.
So you've got an article right here. Let's start with this baby.
Oh,
Brent,
yeah.
you want to lead the show with it?
Yeah. This is when I first met you, I would say.
Boy, a long time ago.
Yeah, the whitetail mounts. I was the up and coming thing that everybody in Vermont had to have.
Yeah.
And you designed them.
I designed them. And actually, one of the instigators to that was Mike Berry. Do you remember Mike?
Oh, very well.
He had come to me and say I was doing gunsmithing back then, and he had approached me, and another fellow had approached me. Why don't you make us some kind of sight and put a base on our rifle that we can pop our scope off, and then you can put this other sight right back on. It'll be for when it's snowing and raining, and I thought it was so I came up with an idea. I said, you know what, I'm going to make a detachable scope mount, and I'm going to incorporate a peep sight, the aperture sight. I'm going to incorporate it right into the base and have it maybe fold out of the way so a guy can just quickly pop the scope off and flip up his rear sight, and doesn't matter raining or snowing, he'd have a reliable for foul weather and even backup. Even if something happened to your scope, okay? So that was in the late 1980s because I was still at IBM then. And so I went to work on an idea, and I went through a couple of revisions with it, and I finally landed with something that I thought would work. Well, I did a show. I went and, I started selling them. And then, of course, your side of the family, they bought They might as well bought stock in them, and they worked. They were reliable.
Yes, they
and
were.
A lot of Vermont and then guys from New Hampshire and Maine. I sold quite a few of them, and then I got hooked up. I don't know how I heard, but I got a call one day from Charlie Alsheimer, and he says, "Well, talk to me about this." And he says, "I heard about him. You call him the whitetail mount." And I said, "Yeah, the fellow up at the Kittery Trading Post in Maine. I was doing work business with him at the time." I was telling him, I said, "I don't know if you'd be interested in marketing these or not." He said, "Well, of course we would be. What are you going to call them?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm Whitetail Gun Shop. We'll call it the Whitetail Mount." No, that's not what happened. I said, "We'll call it the Whitetail Gun Shop Scope Mount." And he short, "Well, why don't you just call it the Whitetail Mount?" I said, "Okay." And for a while, they carried them. Cody's over in New Hampshire carried them. Shops around Vermont carried them. And I had good success with them. I sold quite a few, and including I did a few rifles for Charlie Alsheimer, set them up. You remember those lightweight rifles that I was doing, pumps?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
You were building your own pumps?
yeah, we were modifying them. We were taking a Remington pump, and I was lightening them up. We were doing some stock work and some barrel work, reprofiling the barrel, etc., and kind of doing some work on the rails and the trigger group, and fixing it up so it was a little bit better than when it came out of the box, and topping them with a set of whitetail mounts. And I got so busy. Well, in 1990, there a couple years later, I left my post. I had a pretty good job there at IBM. I was happy, but I was working all day for IBM, and I was working all night in my shop, and it was okay for a while. But I finally had, I got the family together. I said, "Look," I said, "Dad is working around the clock. I got to do one thing or another." Well, the family, "Well, Dad, you're going to have to make that decision yourself." Anyways, I left IBM. I never looked back, and I became a full-time gunsmith. It worked out. But being a full-time gunsmith, deriving your living from working on hunting rifles and wanting to be in the deer woods and wanting to be in the Northwoods in the fall, that was a conflict of interest. So I had a real tough time with that for a while, but again, it eventually worked out. But I don't know how many sets of those whitetail mounts that I sold, but it was enough to keep food on the table in my family. And having said that, at the time, I had one daughter in college. I had another one on the way. And I went to my boss at IBM, so I'm going to resign my post. He said, "What, are you crazy?" And I said, "Well, maybe, but I'm going to try it on my own just the same." It worked out. And I ended up, I still use a whitetail mount today. I still have people, my neighbors have them. Beaver was just here. Beaver was just here this morning, said he shot his rifle, and he still got, it was one of my pumps I did for him way back when. He says, "I'm still using it. It's still going."
So those mounts, you could take them off, put it in your pack.
Yes.
And you could put it back on, and it was spot on, right?
Spot
Your
on.
scope was still spot on.
Spot on. Every time.
Yeah.
And that's just exactly what we did. I sold a lot of little loopholed VX3s, 1.5 to 5s. We were topping on those little Remington pumps because it was small and compact, and that's just what guys were doing. They were popping them off and just putting them right in a fanny pack.
Yeah, no kidding. And then you just run like a Williams peep or something.
I had made the base of the aperture of the sight myself, and then I can't remember, his last name was Calouette. He was with Marble Arms at the time out of Michigan, and they made gun sights. You've probably heard of Marble Sight Company. And they made me the apertures that I needed.
Huh.
And it would just fold down, put the scope on, take the scope off, flip up the peep, and
Yep.
I had a fiber optic. Most of the guys I was using either green or red fiber optic beads, and
That's pretty
it
neat.
it was the go-to thing there for a while, and then I kind of let it fizzle out. I got we started getting away from gunsmithing and custom gun work. Started getting back into contract machining. I went down that avenue because the opportunity was there, and well, 21 or 25 years later, I sold my AS 9100 aerospace company. Full circle, and we're back in the garage again. Working on. Well, now we're building bullets. Yeah.
So in the meantime, you were one of the first to start building long-range muzzleloaders, really
That-
long-range muzzleloaders.
That was, again, we were in camp. We were out in Ontario. Brent was there. And this is a true story. He comes into camp one night, and he says, the great big buck came by about 150 yards. I took my best shot, and I don't remember the exact details, but and so I said, well, what was it? He said, yeah, he says, I think it was a really good one. And okay, so the next day, we all go hunting again, and there was Brent and I, his dad, Beaver, Bobby, and my very good friend Robert Cavaretto. He's here in one of these pictures. So I go out the next morning, I'm picking my way through the slash, and I knew this spot, there was a swale, and I always approached it carefully because I always knew there might be an opportunity there. Well, I'll be damned, you can't believe it. There he was. I'm on one side of the swale, he's on the other. And he was about 250 yards away. And the way I remember, and I might be, is after I shot, I GPSed the point that I was standing, and then when I went over looking for him. But at any rate, there's this beautiful buck standing. I thought he was looking at me. He was glued, what appeared to be right on me. Well, there was a doe 30 yards from me in the swale, and I didn't see, because when I saw him first, and so we were all shooting the same muzzle loader. These little short-barreled Katahdins.
Thompson.
They're made by Thompson. There was a model. And so I'm trying to find a spot I knew he was a long ways, but I had to take a shot. So I'm trying to find something to steady myself on, and I couldn't. So I drop down to my knees, but now I can't see him, so I stand back up. In the meantime, he's frozen. He's like a statue. I still didn't know the doe was in front of me. And that's he was oblivious to me. So my heart was, boy, it was going. And this all took place, it's about, say, a minute has elapsed now. So I got to try. So I got in, and I just got down, and I put the crosshair, trying to control, and the crosshair, it was swaying. It was right between his forehead and his eyes when the gun went off. Boom, recoiled. I came out of recoil, and he was gone. And so I reloaded. I'm saying, well, geez, maybe I got him, maybe I didn't. Well, I don't think I ever touched him. But I reloaded, and I remember he was standing, there was a broken white birch tree. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to walk towards. Well, it took me forever to get over there. But and I'll get back to why this long-range muzzleloader. But anyways, I got over there, and I never touched him. I hunted in there for 3 or 4 more days, never saw him again, which is normal. He was going through there that day, and he was gone. But I got to thinking about it. Then I come back to camp, and I'm telling him my tales of woe, and he comes in, well, I think you said that the wolves were chasing that deer.
That night, I was in that morning, I was in a stand, and the deer came back by me.
Yeah.
I shot again
Yeah.
and knocked him down.
Yeah.
And no blood. And when I got out of the tree, the 2 wolves were standing right beside me.
Yeah.
And they turned around. Eventually, I mean, it was either go back up the tree, but the gun wasn't loaded. They turned and ran.
Yeah.
And I went looking for my deer and never found it. There was no snow.
So with all that winter, and he eventually found his animal, but it was
that night. It was that night I saw the ravens.
Yeah.
That was your big one.
Yeah.
That was that big one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So we, I said, you know what? I said, we got to have a better muzzle loader. And I got to thinking, some people were experimenting around with smokeless powder and bullet to bore. And I said, well, I think I'm going to fool around. And I did. And I came up with and I was at the NRA show down in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. This would be 8 or 9 years ago now. It was quite a while back. And I went down there, and I had my smokeless powder muzzle loader, and I had it advertised. And a fella from Maryland came by my booth. I could think of his name, but anyway, so he says, well, talk to me about this smokeless powder muzzle loader you got. So I told him, and he said, well, where he lived in Maryland, centerfire high-power rifles were not legal for use. And he had a deer problem. He had a farm. He had crops. And the deer were eating him out of house and home. And the state were giving him permits to shoot them. But he said for some reason they figured out the range of his rifle that he was using, and he said they always seemed to be a little bit out of range. So anyways, he purchased one from me, and we started experimenting around with bullets, and he was sending me pictures of shots that he was making at almost 600 yards with that rifle. Now, the longest shot that I ever made with one on target was 500 yards, and it was a 10 ring. But a few years ago, I did make a shot on one at just under 400 yards, and I've had people tell me they've used them. Kevin Camp, for example, he's made some long. George, my buddy out in Kansas, has made some long shots. But yeah, I stopped making them for a couple of different reasons. They're a lot of work, and there are easier ways for me to work and earn my income. Okay. But then the other reason was insurance. And, some people, you load a muzzle loader, a black powder gun, and you don't do something right, well, something can happen. But with these, if you do something wrong with them, somebody's going to get hurt. And I finally decided that I don't want any more of them out there. So that's, but I still do have a few. The insurance guy, Pete John. You know Pete Johnson?
Sure.
His father's Denny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pete's been after, why don't you make me one? Why don't you make me one? And he's been using Kevin's every year. And Kevin says to me, well, Bonham, why don't you make him one? And I'm going to be honest with you, I just don't have the time. There's other things I want to do, and so that's what I'm doing.
Yep.
So the long-range muzzle loader, the smokeless powder muzzle loader, again, it came out of need. We were in camp, and again, my friend, he's taking the deer walking by him, laughing at him. Take your best shot, and he's but they didn't do it after we got that going.
No, for sure.
So
Yep.
that was the muzzleloader.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now you're on to bullets.
Now we're on to bullets, and so that's been a very long process. About 4 years ago, about the time I wanted to get out of making muzzleloaders, I started fooling around with my own bullets. And I made some different methods, cup and core type, and I built dies and press. I did impact extruded, similar to, you've heard of Barnes bullets, solid copper.
Mm-hmm.
I did something like that. And then I did, anyways, I learned a lot. And one of the biggest things that I learned was that the people that are already engaged in the bullet making business, that are making good bullets, they deserve a medal. I learned that I didn't know anything, but I eventually. So now, here about a year ago, I invested into some new equipment, and I kind of combined some technologies, and to make a hunting bullet, and so I did, and well, there's a shooting range. It's a club. It's called JFF. It's over in Fairfax. They have a 22 league there every Thursday night. They've been doing it for over 20 years, and but they also have IBS matches and ARA matches, center fire, high power matches, and they approached me here a few months ago. Well, you're making hunting bullets. Why don't you make match grade bullets? And I said, well, it's because I'm still trying to learn how to make hunting bullets. But anyways, one thing led to another. As it turns out, some of my hunting bullets really shoot good. I mean, real good. We've had them in competition in Connecticut, Maine, and New Hampshire, and we haven't taken any first places with them yet, but we've been right there with a bullet that's designed to expand on game. So,
Are they a copper bullet or
yeah,
lead?
they're a monolithic. They're all copper. And like I say, when I combined technologies, we got some Swiss turning. They start out as bar stock, and they get turned on a very high precision Swiss lathe. And then they go through some dies, and then they go through some metrology, et cetera, et cetera. But so I started kind of varying the geometry of the bullet around, and these guys started shooting them in matches. So we actually ended up with a bullet now. We have kind of, and again, we're just getting going here, Joey. I have a line of hunting bullets. I have around 6 or 8 different calibers now. That are very good hunting bullets that I would use.
That's what you
Yeah,
shot,
I just
right?
shot some last week, and they shot better than anything I've ever shot.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's going to hit anything.
No.
No. He gets shaky.
I get nervous.
sometimes.
I get
Really... I've seen him in
Oh,
action.
yeah. 200 plus pound buck
Yeah.
at 40 yards just loping through the grass, and he whiffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was- yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, so
Bottom fix it. Bottom fix me up.
Yeah, so we got a line of hunting bullets that we're going to start expanding on, and but now this target business, the guys are all excited about them, and I'm starting to get orders for, and those guys buy them 500 at a time, so I'll probably end up selling a lot more of those than I will hunting bullets. But who knows what's going to happen.
It seems like those copper bullets are starting to become more popular. There's certain organizations, a Vermont organization especially, that's buying land up all over New England, and that's all they'll allow is copper bullets on the land that they own.
It's funny you mentioned that. This afternoon I was reading my Maine Sportsman. And there's a fella that's been writing in there the last 2 or 3 issues and advocating lead-free bullets. And again, there are a couple of states in the union. I know there's California, and I think there's another one that for hunting, no lead. But if you go on, most of the states, they have, their websites and everything. Most of them are advocating, not mandatory, but, voluntary. We really recommend the use of lead-free bullets for hunting. So, I'm not going to see it in my lifetime, but the days of lead are coming to an end.
So in your opinion, you making these bullets, is lead more accurate than copper, or is there really a shit's bit of difference?
Well, boy, that's a tough question for me to answer. I have not, like I said, my bullets have not taken a first place in any of the matches yet that we've been to. But by the same token, we have shooters right in this area that are nationally ranked. There's a fellow lives right over here in Fairfax. He travels all over the country and shoots F-class, 600 and 1,000 yards. And he's seen and used some of my other bullets. And he told me, he says, build me. Now the bullets that I'm making for match right now are what we call short-range bench rest, 300 yards and less. The F-class guys, they shoot 600 and 1,000 and beyond, so they need something they'll stay stable. Without getting into the science of it, but what happens once you start shooting out beyond 600-700 yards, the bullet in flight becomes transonic. When that happens, that's an area that the bullet in flight doesn't like. And so you have to design around that. And again, there's another avenue that I have no experience in. So for me to sit here and say, well, my monolithic bullets or anybody's monolithic bullets are more accurate than a copper and lead cup and core bullet, I can't say that. But I can say this, in international F-class, up in Canada, you are not allowed to use a monolithic. It has to be a cup and core bullet. And the theory behind it is that a lathe-turned homogeneous bullet, whether it's made of copper, steel, whatever, but a lathe turn on it is so precise that it could end up being predominantly more accurate. And I must say that, again, in my little bit of experience that I've picked up over the last few years, I've built cup and core and I've built impact extruded, but the bullets that I'm making now are by far more accurate than anything I've ever made in the past. Yeah.
Now, one more question on that. What will that copper bullet do in brush? Will it hold together like a lead bullet, or do we know?
I could talk another hour on just that.
Yeah.
The game is up. As soon as I don't care if you're shooting lead bullets, copper and lead bullets, all copper bullets. I don't care if you're shooting balls from your slingshot through the brush. It doesn't matter. As soon as that projectile hits anything, it's up. It's over. It becomes it loses its stability, and it eventually the center of gravity gets out in front of the center of resistance, and the bullet is going to tumble. So, yeah, there's no such a thing, Joey. There's no such a thing as brush busting. You have just as good a chance to get a bullet, a 55 grain bullet at 3,200 feet per second through a hole in the bushes as you do 2,100 foot per second, 35 Remington 200 grain bullet. As soon as that projectile hits anything, it's over. It's going to lose its stability, and depending how far beyond where it lost its stability will determine whether or not you're going to hit your target.
That's good info.
Yeah. Yeah, you heard it here.
I like it. I like it, Harold. Tell me a buck story.
Well, we can talk about.
I got one for you.
Okay, go ahead.
I got one for you. It ain't
Yeah.
this one.
Okay.
I want to hear a Vermont story because seems like everybody lately were either pounding on the Adirondacks, pounding on New Hampshire, pounding on Maine. Tell me a Big Woods, Vermont story.
Okay, I can do that. It was a very long time ago. I had a camp right at the base of Bluff Mountain in the town of Morgan.
Yeah.
You've been by. That camp is still there.
Right on 114?
Right on 114. As soon as you go headed north, you go through the underpass.
Yep.
Up around the corner, and it's the first camp in there on the right.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Go through the gate, first one on the right.
As soon as you go through the underpass, it's maybe a third of a mile from the underpass, and there's a little driveway that goes into the woods. It's right there.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
It's right there.
Yep.
I think it was 1981. And the reason I remember that is because I had been in Maine for 2 weeks. I never shot anything. We never got any snow. And it was nearing Thanksgiving, and my son, Justin, was home. We lived in Moncton then. And I had called home on Tuesday night, the week of Thanksgiving, and I said, you know what, I'm coming home. I said, I won't be home for Thanksgiving, but I said, we're going to go to deer camp and end the season in Vermont. So we did just that. So there was just myself, a very, very good friend of mine who's passed away now. His name was Rudolph Rotax. He had a farm down there in Moncton. And my son, Justin. And my wife had fixed us a turkey and a box of everything to go with it, the fixings, and to take to camp. So we got into camp Wednesday night ahead of Thanksgiving, and Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Day, myself and my son was just a little guy then. We started up the mountain. There was still no snow. But we went hunting till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We had a great day together. And as we came down off the mountain and we neared the camp, you could see the smoke coming from the wood stove. And when we opened the door, you could smell. My friend had Thanksgiving dinner all laid out for us. And so that was a good event. We went to bed that night, got up 2 o'clock in the morning. It was pouring rain. The rain was coming down like cats and dogs. And I got up, put a couple pieces of wood on the stove, and went back to bed. Well, we got up about 5. It was still raining, but it had just started to turn to great big snowflakes, but it was mixed rain and snow. Well, it got to be where it should have been breaking daylight, but because of the storm, it was still dark, and the rain now had let up, and it was all great big wet. I mean, snowflakes got an inch in diameter, coming down wet, and it was mounting up. So my son says to me, Justin says to me, he said, well, we're going to go hunting, Dad. I said, well, Justin, I said, you're going to be out there half an hour. We're going to be soaked to the bone. And, we kept up. And anyways, he kept after me. Well, come on, come on, Dad, we got to go. And so Rudy, Rotax, he says, why don't you take him? He says, teach him a lesson. I honestly figured we'd be out there a half an hour, 45 minutes, and everything on us we were going to be drenched. Well, we left the cabin, and it was probably by now 8 o'clock in the morning. You could see now, and we started up Bluff Mountain. Wow. Brent, reach over your right shoulder. There's the picture right there. That's it. Pick that up. That's it. Okay. We started up Bluff Mountain, and as hard as it was snowing, we come across these tracks. And I could tell one of them was a buck, and he was probably following the doe. So I said to Justin, I said, boy, look at this, So we started. We didn't follow, and you couldn't make noise. It was so quiet, and the snow was so, visibility might have been 30 yards, 35 yards. It was really snowing hard. And I had my peep sight. I didn't have my scope on my rifle. And we started following. Well, I'll bet you we weren't 5-10 minutes. Well, there's the deer right there. And I was able to get a shot at it, and I got it. And so I says, yeah, I'm going to teach my son a lesson. So that was a nice story. We got him out. We were back down to camp in an hour and a half with him. We hung him up. That's the picture right there.
How old is Justin in this photo?
Maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah, he's just a little guy.
Yeah. If it was 81, he was born in 75, so he'd be about 6.
No kidding.
So that was a nice Vermont hunt, and I had spent almost 2 weeks previous to that in Maine to no avail. And he was just a 4-pointer, but he was a nice big chunky deer.
Yeah, it looks pretty good size.
Yeah, and we got him. And
that photo is classic, though.
That was a good Vermont hunt. And we stayed another day. Saturday, Rudy wanted to go out, did some hunting, and then Sunday morning we got up, put the camp away for the winter, and drove home, and that was the end of the season.
Yep. Did you use that camp much?
Quite a bit, because we used to go up. I used to take my 3 kids. We'd all go up and brook trout fishing through the summer, and there were some of the brooks that were coming off from Bluff Mountain that went down into the Ferens River. We'd had some holes where they could get to fairly easily. And I don't know how many brook trout that they caught, but oh my God. So we'd go up quite a bit in the summer, and then in the fall we'd go up do some bird hunting. But my heart was in Maine. Most of my deer hunting was done in Maine after that. I eventually sold the camp.
Yep.
Because of that. Yeah.
Yep. And so Maine, did you hunt all over Maine? I mean,
yes.
You got a buck right here. That wasn't too long ago from Maine.
Yeah, show that to me. Yeah. Okay. That was up in the Allagash. And let me see. It was probably about 4 years ago, maybe.
He looks fairly heavy.
He was a nice heavy. He didn't go 200. I think he was around 185 or 190 pounds.
Yeah, good buck.
And I found him. I used to stay at a little cabin up there. Old C.T. Carl used to stay in the same campground. And Jan and Brenda Sosi. And Jan was an old woodsman. And after I'd been up there a couple years there, he used to, he said, I was over such a place, and boy, there was a lot of deer crossing the road there, and he says, you ought to go over there and check that out. And I did. That was another dry ground buck. I've been fortunate, Joey, in my life. I've shot a fair number of deer on dry ground. Just a lot of it is luck, of course.
What were you doing? Were you just poking around?
So Jan had told me. He said, "Boy," there seems to be a lot of deer activity over there. So I drove over and found this spot, and I was all by myself. And I took my rifle, I put it on my shoulder, and I started in. I picked up some tracks right off the road. And as they got into the woods, they started funneling into trails. And the trails were well used. So I spent 2 or 3 days over there just still hunting those trails. And it was fun. I never hunted the same place twice, but I was in this area, maybe a mile and a half area. And I just still hunted all day. I probably didn't walk more than a mile and a half all day long, sneaking and peeking, sometimes sit down and take a nap for 10 minutes. But, and in this one particular morning, I walked right onto him.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so I cleaned him out, and I drove back to the town of Allagash and got Jan. We got a sled. And I remember when we loaded him into the sled, he really draped over the sled. And Jan said, "Oh, boy, this is a pretty good one, he said. And so it did. He was not 200 pounds, but he was a nice buck.
Yeah, nothing wrong with
And I
that.
was
It's a good deer.
tickled to death to get him. Yeah.
Yep.
It was a good day. It was a good hunt.
Yep, for sure. That's
Yeah.
what matters.
Yeah.
Have you hunted a lot up that direction?
Yeah, I haven't been up there now, well, since before COVID.
Just before COVID, didn't you shoot a pretty good one? I thought you killed one over 200 just before.
Yeah,
just before COVID.
Yes, I did.
It was right after I had met you in Kansas. There.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, why didn't I get back up there? I think, I don't know, I think maybe we went back out to Ontario maybe or something. Ontario has been good to me over the years. It's had its ups and its downs, but I hunted in the Allagash for 4 or 5 years. I shot 3 bucks up there. One of them was with Todd Burke. You know Todd?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
I
came
remember
up, and it was funny. He was hunting, and it was just a 6-pointer, but it was on snow, and I wasn't really tracking them. There was just a bunch of deer in there, and I said, I'm just going to meander around in here, and the buck eventually walked right onto me, and I shot him. Well, Todd had dropped me off, and I had parked my truck, and he had gone down the road a mile or something. Now he was going to hunt, and I was in an awful slough hole. Oh, it was a mess. So we had a signal. We didn't have radios or anything, so I fired the signal to let him know that I had shot a deer. Well, I didn't hear anything back, and I never saw him till 2 o'clock that afternoon. I had the deer down to the road, and I said, pretty convenient for you. But no, the Allagash, I liked it up there. It's a long way to go. It's cut up terrible. There's been so much logging up there. There's so many roads, and you'll get into a spot, you think you've got it all to yourself. All of a sudden, you step out on a road, and here comes a truck down the road. I ran into that a little bit until I learned more about the area, but I liked it up there. I did a lot of hunting in the Moosehead Lake region and north of Moosehead Lake. I did a lot of hunting right in western Maine off from Beaudry Road, Goldbrook Road. And down the Magalloway watershed, down along the New Hampshire border. There's a lot of deer down there.
Yep.
I think you guys have been into there, but we travel that. Sometimes in the winter we'll take a day and drive over there and just drive down, and geez, there's so many deer that winter around there.
Yeah, it's nice to see them.
Yeah, it is.
It sure is.
But yeah, Maine has always been near and dear to me.
Yep.
There's another one here. It was a big, big, big. I think it's in that book right over there. But there was a big 6-pointer that I shot years ago. And we were up. Yeah, it is in here. Let me see if I can show you a picture of that.
What state was that?
Maine. Boy, there was a nice 11-pointer. Boy, look at this one. Isn't that a beauty?
Wow.
Yeah. But,
He would do.
yeah.
Pretty buck.
I was up hunting. There's another 6-pointer. That one was 215. There, right here. This isn't much of a picture, fellas. But that buck right there, I think, went 225. And that was another dry ground buck. Up between Moose Mountain and Skinner. There's an Indian reservation. If you go through Skinner, the Passamaquoddies have some tribal land in there, and you're not supposed to go into there. But it was between there and Moose Mountain. And again, I had been in there hunting. I was all alone. I was all by myself. We were staying in the tents back then. And I had been in there for a couple of days. There was big buck sign in there everywhere. A year or two previous, it was rumored that Lane Benoit had shot like a 280-pound buck down in there somewheres. And I don't know that he did or that he didn't, but what I was seeing in there for sign, it kept me going in there. And so, sure enough, I got in there one morning early, and he had just come away from a scrape. And I've had good luck around scrapes, spotting them and knowing he was just here. And you really can smell him, and it lingers there. You know he's close. And I was able to follow it, and I jumped him. I heard him go, but I never saw him. So I stayed right with him. I kept going. I kept right going. If I'd have been going any faster, I think I would have ran right into him. He stopped and turned around, and I almost ran right into him. And the rest is history. Yeah.
That's a good buck.
That was a good buck. He was over, I think he was right around 225. Yeah.
That's a good one. You ever hunt the Adirondacks much?
Yep. I have a picture here for you guys from the Adirondacks. I just had it. You might have picked it up. You might have not.
Is it in this stack?
He's in the water.
No, I didn't
was
see any in
dragging
the
him
water.
across the river. But that was a buck. That was a hunt. Well, here's another Adirondack. This one here I shot. That's a nice Adirondack buck right there.
Yep, that's a beautiful buck.
And the woods over there are beautiful. But I had shot. I was hunting over there with my buddy Charlie. And we had a camper that we used to drag into, what's that road? It goes into there's some Rockefeller property over in there. Ampersand Mountain is in that region. And we were hunting over in there, and we had actually crossed the Ampersand River to get up into this area that we were hunting. And we had put a rope across the river so we could hold it. We had to wear our high boots, and we would hold our balance across the river, and we'd go hunting. And so this was a story where my scope mount came in handy. The day before, I had opened up the truck door in the passenger side, and my rifle happened to be leaning against. The rifle fell down, smashed the scope, and well, okay, I just pulled the scope off. I left it in camp, and I hunted with the peep sight. And so we went out that, well, it was a day or two after that. So I had been over there. I had been hunting with the peep sight. And that morning, Charlie and I crossed the Ampersand River, and he went one way and I went the other. And it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, I heard him shooting, and he had shot a buck. And because I heard him fire the signal. And the plan was, if you hear the signal, just mark down what time it is, and if you're anywhere near, come. But if not, we'll go back tomorrow and get it. So I heard him shooting, and I said, you know what? I said, the day is still pretty young. I'm going to keep hunting. So I did, and I had gone up over what we called Hill 562. And I had gotten up on there, and there was a little bit of snow. And you could see where the deer had been meandering around and such. And I remember it was really cold. My toes were frozen, and God, I was shivering, and I got to move. But I was trying to move and stay quiet, but again, cold, crunchy leaves. I was making a lot of noise, so I tried to do more looking than moving. And anyways, it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was just starting to think, well, you know what? I could walk towards my buddy and help him drag his deer, and that'd be a good way for me to warm up. Well, just then, way off, as far as you could see in the hardwoods, I see something moving. So I waited. Well, it's a deer. And it kept coming, and it kept coming. Well, it's a buck. And when he got about 60 yards from me, I leaned against the tree, and I put my bead on him, and I got him. And that was an Adirondack, and it was kind of neat. We got Charlie's deer out that night. I met him down at the river. We went back and got his deer, and then the next morning we went in and got mine and got him out. But it was fun in camp that night because he was a big guy on deer camp history, and he said it's rare two buddies shoot a buck the same day and everything. And again, it was a fun night in camp. Just the two of us. We were the two biggest shots in the Adirondacks that night.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
That's a good hunt.
And then another Adirondack hunt, that was actually this deer here. And I'll find that picture of the one in the river. I thought I had pulled it out, but another year we were hunting over in there, and I was back up on what we called Hill 562. And I was actually tracking a big buck. And we had come up, and I had got around behind 562. I was right in the basin to Ampersand Mountain. You'd love it over there. Big, big woods, hardly any hunters. Well, back then there was hardly any hunters, but big, big, beautiful hardwoods. And I knew the deer was bedded, and I knew he was within eye shot of me, but I couldn't see him. And again, I was in an awful slough hole. I got to a point where I couldn't move anymore without making a lot of noise. So I said, I'm going to wait him out. And I knew about where he was, and it was pretty simple. I've been following this animal for an hour and a half, and I can see, and there's no tracks over there, okay? He's right here. So, anyways, again, I got cold. My toes, it was cold. And those lacrosse rubber boots, they're... Anyways, I finally, after 10 or 15 minutes standing there, of course, I had gotten sweaty, and I'm shivering. I said, I got to move. So I didn't take 2 steps, and up he comes, big gray face, big gray antlers, and he went down the mountain like a freight train. And up I come, I got a bead into his rump, boom, I got one shot. And, well, I went down there, and I had a blood trail. So I started following him. Do you know Jim Beecher?
Sure.
Okay, Jim was hunting with me over in there that day. It was me, him, and Charlie. And Jim heard the shot. And so I'm following this animal, and we had a fair amount of blood. And I'll be a son of a gun. He went right by Jim. Jim never seen him, but Jim was coming off the hill, and he whistled to me. And he said, was that you that shot? I says, yeah. I says, and he looked, boy, oh boy. He says, well, it was starting to get late. We followed him. The deer crossed the river again. We got wet. And we got back up on the road there. And it was about 4 o'clock. It was getting dark, and up the road was Charlie coming in a pickup truck looking maybe to pick us up. And the next morning, it was a long night in camp, but we all thought that the animal we were going to find him in the morning. Well, we never did. But we followed that animal off into the pucker brush. I'm going to tell you, did he bring us through some deer? And so we went back down in there another day hunting, and didn't Charlie get a shot at a monster buck? I heard him shoot, and I'm waiting. Next thing you know, a doe comes flying by me, and then I just see this great big mahogany-colored rack floating above the scrub beach. And I tried to get a shot. Well, I got another shot, but I never touched him again. Charlie never hit him. Behind that guy was a 4-pointer that Charlie ended up shooting. So, okay, so this big guy had evaded us again, if it was even the same deer. Okay. So on the way, we're dragging this deer. We're dragging his 4-pointer out, and I had unloaded my rifle. And there was another fellow with us. His name was Chad, was with us that day, a neighbor to Charlie there. And Charlie happened to, he says, you know, we had to leave. It was getting late. We wanted to get out, so we buried the deer. We were walking out, and Charlie happened to mention, hey, he says, you guys got your rifles loaded? And I said, well, I don't have one in my chamber. And no, so we jacked one into the chamber, and all of a sudden we hear a couple of deer grunting. We cue balled them. There were bucks running everywhere. I think there was at least 3 different bucks.
Wow.
So this is one of them. That's one of them. I got him. That's the 4-pointer that Charlie had shot earlier. All right. And so Chad opens up on one of the bucks. I opened up on one of them. And all of a sudden they were all gone. And there's nothing laying dead on the ground yet. And all of a sudden, this guy comes running right back at me, and I finally got him. So that was another day that a couple of buddies had shot deer. But those were what we call the magic days. It was just happening. And I'm not positive. I think that was the last year that I ever hunted in the Adirondacks. And I don't know, I never got a real big buck over there, but I had a couple of opportunities, and I blew it. That's the way it goes. I mean, you don't get them all.
Nope, you definitely don't. That's what keeps you coming back for more.
You don't get them all. But I've had some very good hunts over there. Yep.
That's good. That's good. Well, we should probably wrap this up just about an hour in. So, Harold, thank you very much. If anybody's looking for your bullets.
802-355-1205.
There you go.
And you're
Or you'll be,
building
or we're going to launch a website here probably in a couple of more weeks.
Yep.
Other than that, you can contact me directly.
Do you have
There
a
you
web
go.
address for that? You have a web address for that now?
The web is, we got the rough draft of it. We're making some revisions to it. We think we're going to be ready to launch it in a couple of more weeks. Yeah.
And the name of that is what?
TRC, Torre Rifle Company.
Okay, there we go. And Brent can attest. He shot them. What? When did you shoot those? 2 weekends ago.
No, last weekend. Yep.
And they shot much better than factory.
Oh, by far. Not
by
even
far.
close.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Well, I did a good job for you.
Absolutely, you did.
But I do a good job for anybody. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
thanks again,
Fellas, before you sign off, I would like to take one more minute.
Yeah.
What you boys are doing with Northwoods Whitetails, I think it's great. Again, I haven't seen Justin, my son, watches all and he enjoys every one of them. And I think, Brent, you had told me you got some calls from somebody that, they look forward to the Wednesday morning or whenever
Every
it airs.
Wednesday morning when they're released. Yeah.
I'd like to I'll tell you, you guys are doing a hell of a job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Anything you can do to perpetuate our sport,
Yeah.
thumbs up, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And keep up the good work.
Okay.
All right. Until the next time, guys.
Over and out.
Thank you.